And we're good.
All right, everyone, welcome to the second installment of the Virtual Career Exploration Camp presented by Body Armor. Really good to see everyone. Really good to be here. It's been a while. I think Miles, we had our last virtual program maybe like over a month ago. And it has been a hectic summer for sports biz camps with a lot of in-person programming. So to date, we've been able to put on Josh. This is all FYI for you. You're going to get quizzed on this later. We've done Miles. Keep me straight here. 5 weeks of programming in 4 different cities since June 20th. So like five weeks of camp in 6 weeks, and getting ready to do a couple more in-person programs here. Two more in Charlotte, and then one more in DC to finish this out. So been a lot of activity on the ground in Indianapolis, Charlotte, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and then eventually DC. So we're really humbled that our donors and sponsors have allowed us to put on those programs in person for students in those areas. And for the unfortunate few who don't live in those cities, but are still looking for the sports biz campus experience and still learning to how they can work in sports and explore different opportunities in sports, we have the one and only Joshua Harrison, and we have the virtual career exploration camp presented by Body Armor. So I'm going to ask Josh to do kind of a short intro, and then we'll bring it back to me. We'll kind of lay the groundwork for what this conversation is going to be like, and then we're going to jump in. So, Josh, real quick, hometown, what you thought you were going to be when you were in high school, and then your current role, and then we'll come back here and we'll kind of start to lay the foundation for the discussion.
Of course. Well, Patrick, Miles, first of all, thank you both for having me, man. I'm excited to be here and be able to talk to everyone. I'll definitely keep it short and sweet. I'm actually from Fredericksburg, Virginia, not too far out of the Washington D.C. area. Growing up, you couldn't tell me I wasn't going to be a professional basketball player. You couldn't tell me I wasn't going to the NBA. And my current role, my current job is I am a NBA agent with Lift Sports Management.
Awesome. And how long have you been in that role, Josh?
I am actually a year and a half into being a sports agent.
Nice. So you're like a rising sophomore-ish.
Yeah, rising sophomore. I'm like halfway through my sophomore year.
Awesome, Josh. So we're gonna dig deeper. A couple of things I wanted to touch on before we start the conversation. So, Josh, you probably saw these little emojis. So we encourage anyone following along with Josh. Josh drops something great, some real insight. You give him a wow, maybe give him a heart. When I say something funny, you give me a laugh. So we want you guys to engage as much as we possibly can. Josh isn't here to talk at you. He's here to talk with you. So if that's one way you can communicate, please use the emojis. Another thing to look at too, if you guys look to the right of your screen, we have a Q&A option. So you can post a question in there. If Miles sees the question, he'll come to you. We can pull that question up to the main stage, Miles. We can ask it. And then furthermore, if you have a question you want to ask, you guys can drop in the Q&A and we can bring it up to the main stage, or you can raise your hand and we can call on you and bring you up. So once again, Josh is not here to talk to me. He's not here to talk to Miles. He's here to talk to you guys. So the more we can get you involved, the better. And then Joshua, we're probably going to end up trying to do that every 10 or 15 minutes. So you and I talk about something, then we pass the ball to the students, let them come up and ask a question and go back for it. Cool?
Perfect.
And obviously, we do have a chat. So you guys feel free to use the chat throughout the entire conversation. Try not to ask your questions in there. Use the Q&A or the raise the hand. But if you do, because you can't figure out the other stuff, no worries. Miles is going to be documenting that, and we'll find a way to bring up to the stage. Cool? Awesome. All right, so Josh, I'm going to brag on you a little bit. So your goal was to play professionally. You did that. I'm sure your goal before that was to play in college. You did that for a pretty damn good school. All right, so one of the things that we talk about before we get into the career exploration component is a lot of our students are student athletes, and they want to become student athletes in college. So looking back on that experience, and I know this is probably kind of hard to think back, but like as you're going through the recruiting exercise, what do you wish you would have known about being recruited and making a college decision that you now know? And I'm not suggesting that you didn't have a great experience at Duke. Obviously, you probably did. But just some advice for our student athletes here in high school that are hoping to get there to the next level in college.
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the one thing that I will say, I feel like all you guys that are out there listening that aspire to be collegiate athletes is always put yourself first. Always think about a scenario, a school, a coach, a team, a system that is best going to fit what you bring to the table. A lot of guys, especially now with the boom of social media, I was growing up in an awkward time where social media was brand new, but it was, people really didn't post or share too much information. Um, and one of the things that, again, I had an unbelievable experience at Duke playing for Coach K. I mean, I tell people to this day, Coach K is definitely one of the most influential people I had and have in my life to this day. I spoke to Coach this morning about a couple of things that I needed some guidance on, but always don't get caught up on the name of the university or where your friends are going or whatever. Always sit back and think to yourself, is this school, is this coach, is this team, is this situation the best fit for me to be able to progress and get to where I want to go? I'm sure everybody wants to be professional athletes in some capacity, whether that's playing football, basketball, baseball, field hockey, whatever you're doing. Make sure you're choosing a school, because every school, when you're going through the recruiting process, right, everybody wants you. So they're going to tell you what you want to hear to get you there and make you feel that you're important. But you have a feeling when you're talking to the school that is it. You have that gut feeling where okay, this is the right situation for me. This is where I'll be able to thrive and really grow and become the player that I want to become. And so, again, whether that's at a high major school, whether that's at a mid-major school, it doesn't matter. Go where you feel the most comfortable and where you feel like is the best fit for you.
So what was it about Duke that made that the best fit for you, apart from the fact that it was Duke and Coach K?
Man, so I want to take you guys back a little bit through my recruiting process, because my recruiting process started a little bit late. And when I say late, I got my first offer my ninth grade year, which now you're seeing guys getting offers in seventh and eighth grade. It's ridiculous, but also guys are more athletic than when I was coming up. But I had essentially a lot of Big East schools. Being in Virginia, I had Virginia Tech, Virginia, Maryland, Georgetown. I pretty much had my eyes set that I was going to probably stay close to home. I come from a collegiate athlete family. My dad played football at Appalachian State. My mom was a college athlete at Virginia Tech. So in my mind, Virginia Tech was where I was going to go. You couldn't tell me anything different. And my phone rings one day, and it's a 919 area code that pops up, and 919 is Durham, North Carolina, where Duke is. And I answer the phone, and it's Coach K. And I grew up a North Carolina fan, and I've shared this story with Coach before. I grew up diehard North Carolina fan. I got family down in that area. And just like everybody else, you grow up, you hate Duke, but you hate Duke because they win. It's JJ Redick, it's Christian Laettner, it's all those guys. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, it's Coach K. I probably won't end up going here. 30 minutes after a conversation with him, I remember hanging up the phone and looking at my mom and dad and saying, this is it. Like, I don't even have to take a visit down there. Like, this guy, like, he didn't promise me anything. The only thing he guaranteed me was that I would have an opportunity to earn minutes. I'd have an opportunity to play, and I'd have an opportunity to play for championships. And for me as a competitor, that's all I needed. I didn't like when coaches promised things. I didn't like when coaches said, hey, I promise you're going to play 30 minutes a game and you're going to have the ball 75% of possessions. That doesn't do anything for me, because if you're promising me that, how do I know you're not promising other people that? Like, yeah. I just want you to tell me I have an opportunity to compete, and I have an opportunity to go out there and earn real minutes. And what I do with that is on me. And so Coach was blatantly honest with me from the very beginning. And like I said, I still use him and call him to this day. And it's been probably one of the best decisions I've made was attending Duke.
Really interesting story, obviously. Amazing insight. I was never recruited by Coach K or anyone for that matter. So it's cool to learn to be able to talk to someone that's been through that process. One quick question on that. From an academic standpoint, how did you decide your major? And then what was your major, and how did you approach the academic side of that? I know that the goal was to play professionally, but what was your mindset with respect to school?
Yeah, so the one thing with school that we were always told, and it's always kind of been programmed with me, like my mom and dad, when I realized that being a college athlete, no matter what level, I had a chance to do it. My dad, going through the process, knew grades were very important. And so for me, I've always zeroed in on my grades. I know it's when I was growing up, sometimes it wasn't the cool thing to take your studies seriously and all that sort of stuff. But to me, that really didn't matter. I was focused on, I wanted to go to school, especially when I knew I wanted to go to Duke, and nothing was going to get in the way of that, especially not something that I could control. And as far as academics are concerned. And so I've always been focused on that. When I got to Duke, though, obviously it's a little different. You're still in school, but your basketball requirements are through the roof. I mean, you have 6 a.m. workouts, then you have class, and you got to come back and lift, then you have class again, then you got to come back for practice, and you have class again. And then after class, you have study hall, and you have team meal, and then you do that repeatedly every single day. And so my grades by no means were they at the level they were when I was in high school, but I was just kind of experimenting with different classes. I was taking theater classes. I was taking, different social classes, all that sort of stuff. And I actually ended up settling on sociology. And to be honest, the reason I took it is all my teammates were psychology. And so I wanted to be different. And so I chose sociology, which to be honest was probably wasn't the smartest thing because everybody had kind of the same teachers and courses. And I was the only guy that was kind of away doing his own thing. But I had some amazing professors that were super helpful. And, of course, when I'm in it, you really don't think how I'm going to use a sociology degree. But the biggest thing is just having a degree from Duke, period. It doesn't matter what it says on there, as long as it's a degree from Duke. That's the biggest thing that I'm actually most proud of.
Is that a personality trait that you like? If people are going left, you want to go right?
No, to be honest, no, it's not. And that's why I sit back and I kind of laugh at myself because I don't know what I was thinking. That's definitely not my personality. I'm by no means a follower, but I also don't like straying from the crowd. So if I'm like, if everybody's kind of doing a certain thing, I'm like, okay, well, cool, I'll try it, unless it's something obviously that I know I don't like. But I think one day we were just sitting in our academic advisor's office and he was asking the freshmen, that is, we were all freshmen, he was asking us what we wanted to do. And the three other freshmen that came in with me were all like psychology. And I was like, oh, well, I'll do. So I asked what I had my most classes toward so far, and it was sociology. And I was like, you know what, I'll do that. So it's kind of an easy choice. It was kind of a cop out, but to be honest, I actually enjoyed all my classes.
Yeah. And do you think, I guess psychology probably be more helpful in your current role, although sociology is probably not a bad background either.
No, you're 100% right. Psychology, as we can get into it later, but when you're an agent, you're not only negotiating contracts, you're a therapist, you're so many other things. Everything you can think of. That's our job in one title. It's just agent is, everybody thinks that's just the one thing we do is contracts, but it's so much more.
Really fascinating. I want to see if people get kind of shy on here, Joshua. I want to see if anyone has a question for you. And no, he can't sign you right now unless maybe you send him your hype reel. And he also can't get Coach K to recruit you either, necessarily. I don't think so. Unless you're really good. I'm sure he's happy to do it. Who's got a question?
Don't be shy, guys.
Come on. You're too shy. Oh, here we go. All right, I'm going to bring up a young woman named Sydney. She has a question, and I got to figure out how I can bring her up. Lana, can you raise your hand, Sydney, or drop in the Q&A? There she is.
Hi.
Josh, this is so Sydney's a alumnus of our program. She works with us a little bit. Important to note, she's also getting ready to make a college decision.
Nice. Hi, Sydney.
So she's gonna have a couple questions for you. Go ahead, Sid.
So if you could do anything differently about your college decision process, what would it be?
The one thing I wish I would have done differently, I would have taken all my official visits. I think at the time you could do 5. I don't know what the rules are now, but I committed to Duke at the end of my sophomore year. And so I didn't have an opportunity to really take any visits or experience anything else. And even if I would have taken my visits, I 100% know that Duke would have still been my choice. But just being able to get out and see other universities and campuses and all that sort of stuff, that's one of the things I tell. I have a young cousin that's going through the process now, and he knows where he wants to go. But I'm saying, hey man, like take all your visits. Like you never know. Like just, and also the experience in itself, man. Just go see as many different universities as you can. Every college campus is different, and get a feel for it yourself, regardless if you know where you want to go in your heart already. So that's the one thing I wish I would have done differently.
Sydney, we tell Josh how many visits you've taken?
How many visits I've taken?
Yeah.
I think I've taken 5.
Perfect.
Or, well, actually, that's wrong because my brother, he played Division I football. So, and I went to all his games. So then that number like skyrockets.
And then tell Josh your top 5 schools, and then he's going to tell you where you should go. So all that anxiety and concern where you should go, he's going to just answer it for you.
Okay, so I'm looking at Vanderbilt, UVA, UNC.
You got to – Josh, don't make that face with UNC. You liked UNC at one point when you were in high school.
I know, but you know where my loyalty lies these days.
Georgetown, and how many was that?
That was a lot.
UVA already?
Yeah. All right, Josh, where should she go? You're her agent.
Those are all great universities. I will definitely tell you. I need to know what do you want to do? Do you play sports? What's your goal? What do you want to do?
Well, I want to be a sports attorney.
So automatically right off the bat, I'm going to say UVA or UNC.
That's good.
UVA or UNC. And that takes a lot for me to tell you UNC in that group. Trust me, that hurts. We might have to cut that piece out of the recording.
Okay.
Yeah, great option, Sydney. Sydney, another follow-up question for Josh or no? He made the decision easy for you, which is good. Got down to 2.
Yeah, my those are now my top 2 choices.
Okay. All right, we're gonna probably bring you back, Sid. Thanks for coming in, and we're gonna jump to post-college. So, Josh, I assume you played. So, talk through your professional, like post-college, played pro, but then talk through when you started to realize that, like, I had to do something beyond playing. And how you identify what that thing could be.
So I graduated from Duke in 2014, and realistically in 2012, I knew that I probably wasn't going to play in the NBA. And so in my mind, I knew that there were other avenues other than the NBA. I knew that I could play overseas. And so I started.
Josh, can I ask you a question? I didn't mean to cut you off. Can I ask you a question on that? Does someone come to you and say you're not going to play in the league? Like, does like Coach K be like, you don't cut it? Is like, how do you figure that, or do you look around? How do you figure that out?
No, they by no means do they come and tell you that. You have to almost look in the mirror with yourself and realize that, I played with some incredible athletes at Duke. My freshman year, I was fortunate. I played with Kyrie Irving. My sophomore year was Austin Rivers. Junior year was Rasheed Suleiman and Emil Jefferson. Emil is actually an assistant coach there now. And my senior year was Jabari Parker. And so I'm playing with these guys that are coming in, and, we're all good where we come from, right? We're all high level. I was the best in my area. But then the beautiful thing about college is when you get there, everybody's good where they come from. And you realize, okay, this guy might be a step ahead than where I am. And I realized that early with Kyrie. By no means, I thought that I was really good coming into school, and I thought that I was going to be a guy that played a lot and scored a lot of points. And then my first practice with Kyrie, I realized that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And obviously you see what he's doing now.
How does that feel? How does that hit?
Well, it depends on who you are as a person. Like for me, it motivated me to continue to work harder. It's just, some guys have it and some guys don't. And I've always been a realist. I've always been one that's kind of, I'm very fortunate. I credit my parents. I've always been able to kind of like take a step back and kind of view things from a different perspective and be real with myself. I've never been one of the guys that's kind of drag myself on or kind of just falsely thinking I can do something. And so I put in a lot of work, and it obviously takes a lot of work to get to Duke, but then to get to Duke to the NBA is a whole nother level of work. And I didn't have it, and I have no problem admitting that now. And I think that's one of my main selling points when I talk to clients that I'm recruiting and going through the process, man. And so after I graduated, I signed with an agent. I went overseas to play in Europe. I told myself I gave myself a 5-year window. I said, after 5 years, no matter where I played, I'm going to sit back, reevaluate. And if I want to keep playing, I'll do, a year by year basis, or I'll do another 5 years, or whatever the case may be. And I played, my first year was in Lugano, Switzerland, which living wise was absolutely beautiful. Basketball wise was absolutely terrible. I came from playing in Cameron Indoor Stadium, sold out every night, just unbelievable atmosphere, to my first game in Switzerland, running out on our home court. It was probably 20 people in the stands, if that. And then that was a tough experience. And then my next year I went to Stockholm, Sweden, which was total opposite. It reminded me a lot of Duke. Stockholm is a beautiful country, but loves basketball. They may not be that high on the national competitive list as far as like countries are concerned, but they love the game of basketball. And so sold out games. My team was great. We went to the finals. We lost, but it was great. Third year played in Israel, which was a lot of fun. I was in Tel Aviv, probably the most fun I've had in any situation. And then my final 2 years I played in Italy, which were unbelievable. But going into Christmas, my 4th year, I hit my wall. When you're overseas, you're gone for 9 to 10 months out of the year. Sometimes you get to go home for a week to see your family around Christmas, but most of the time you don't. And so I didn't get to go home for Christmas. And I remember sitting, I had mentioned earlier, one of my teammates was Kyrie Irving. He's one of my best friends to this day. And I remember calling him, and it was Christmas Eve. And I remember telling him my 4th year that I hit my wall. I don't know if I want to continue playing anymore. I just don't know what life outside of basketball looks like. I never had a job a day in my life. I didn't work at a grocery store. I didn't work at Foot Locker. Basketball was all I knew. And so the thought of having to figure out something else terrified me, to be honest. And I was like, I didn't want to continue playing basketball, though, and being unhappy. I didn't want to go overseas and just collect a check and, be missing my family and, my girlfriend, who's now my wife. We had just started dating at the time, and I'm really big on family and friends. And so I didn't like being gone, missing too many events. And so I told him I wanted to finish my 5th year, and he was in Boston at the time. And he said that he was getting ready to transition over to, at the time, he didn't know where he wanted to go, but we had some inkling it was going to be either New York or Brooklyn. And he just asked me to come with him. And so I finished my 5th year, left Italy, went straight to New York, met with him, and started working with him. And then obviously, I don't know if we can get into that piece a little bit later, but that's I realized that I needed something outside of basketball midway through my 4th year of playing professionally.
And you didn't really know what that was necessarily, right? You just knew that it was going to be around the sport of basketball.
Yeah. So I thought I wanted to coach for a long time. And, as a former athlete, that's almost the easiest route for us to take is coaching. I had kind of had some small conversations. A lot of my old teammates that were at Duke that weren't playing professionally had started coaching. And so I'm talking to them through it. And then, my wife now is a coach. And so I'm kind of seeing her experience. And then I realized I just don't have the patience to coach. Coaching is a whole nother job in itself. And I just knew that that's not what I wanted to do. And so I knew I wanted to stay around the game of basketball. I just didn't know what capacity that looked like. And, when I can't remember my age at the time, but when the game of basketball is all that's literally the thought of getting a regular job, doing real estate or insurance or anything like that. Well, there's nothing wrong with those jobs, but it it didn't sit well with me. I didn't know if I'd be able to handle it, to be honest, just because sports, athletics, competition, basketball has been my entire life. And so that thought scared me. I definitely, during that time, it was something that was bothering me a lot because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, you must like, I don't know. I just think it's a really important takeaway before I want to kick it to Miles for a question. Everyone always feels like there's always someone that knows more. There's always someone that knows less. Like everyone always feels like that imposter syndrome, I guess what I'm saying, Joshua. And like here you are, you go to Duke, you play professional basketball, and you're feeling less than because you don't have all this experience because you've been playing basketball all the time. And I think we can all relate to that at different parts of our life. And it's ironic to see someone with your background and your stature and your Rolodex and so on and so forth feeling that way, because I don't think a lot of young people ever think that's the case, but it's true, right?
It's very true. And to be honest, the one thing I try to tell people all the time, especially I have a lot of younger teammates or guys that, have come through Duke that are playing overseas or whatever the case may be. I always tell people you have to start thinking of your plan B right now, no matter if you plan on playing professionally over in Europe 10 years, that's fine. You can do that. But during that time, always think about what you want to do afterwards, because that is a real thought, a real concern, a real fear. When you're in it, when you're living it every day, you're going to Duke and you graduate and you're playing overseas and your basketball is your life. You don't think about what tomorrow looks like. You don't think about what the next month or year looks like. And which of course is also understandable. You're young, you've got your whole life ahead of you. You're not thinking about what life looks like afterwards. But one of the things I wish I could do going back, if I could, was set myself up even better. I'm fortunate, Duke and the relationships I've established have been super helpful in being able to get me to where I'm at now. But if I would have taken it a little more seriously as far as wanting to lay a foundation for once basketball was over, I'd be in a totally different spot than I am now. And I'm in a really good spot right now. But if I would have taken the time to really set that foundation pretty strongly, then I feel pretty good that I'd be in a different spot.
Yeah, man, I love your story. I'm going to stop hemming and hawing. I'm connected to Miles. Miles, you had a question. There's in the chat from Julian. If you want to ask that, and maybe it's kind of a two-part question, both answering that question, but also maybe Josh had some advice for the students as well.
Absolutely. So, Josh, how did you actually become a sports agent, making that transition from being overseas to an agent? Because I know you went directly overseas after college.
So it plays back into the conversation I had with my friend Kyrie. My fourth year, I told him, I was like, man, like I want to come home and work. I just don't know what that looks like. And, he said, hey, like after your fifth year, he knew kind of like when I say I'm sticking to something, I'm sticking to it. So I told myself I was doing 5 years. I'm not quitting, regardless of how I feel about going over there. I'm going to do my fifth year, and then I'll come home and figure it out after that. And he said, after your fifth year, come with me, work with me. He was putting a team together of people to work on his brand and development and all that sort of stuff. So after my fifth year, I went straight to New York, started sitting with him, started working on different things with Nike with his shoe, started working on different investment projects, got an AAU team started. There were so many things we did in his first year in Brooklyn. And that kind of made me realize the level that I wanted to be at. I knew then that I wanted to continue to work with high level athletes, especially NBA, because I'm fortunate I get the best of both worlds. My wife, who she was my girlfriend at the time, was coaching at Arizona, and so I get to be around collegiate women's basketball, and I cheer for her team like they're my girls, and then I get to work with the best athletes in the world with Kyrie. And it's literally the best of both worlds, man. So the only thing is, once we really got working in New York, COVID hit. And for anybody that's in the New York area or has followed COVID when it first happened, New York, Jersey area was ground zero. And I was in an apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment with another close friend of mine. And I'm from rural Virginia, where I have a backyard, front yard. I can go out and kind of breathe and get out of the house. And I just couldn't do that in the apartment. And my wife had a house in Arizona. And so I literally just left my apartment as is, packed a bag, and stayed in Arizona, and was doing some research on different business opportunities in the NBA. I had gone on actually the NBA website. A guy that he's a friend of mine that actually played at Duke in the early 2000s, who works with the NBA in the league office, had told me about some opportunities work-wise to look into. So I was looking on the website for different things, and nothing really amused me. And then I just thought about, what about being an agent? And I went on the NBPA website and kind of looked up the parameters for what's needed and how to go about things. And I called Kai and told him that's what I wanted to do, and literally signed up for the test, took the test, and passed it. And here now. It was honestly, it was really, really random. It was really by fate, to be honest. I 2-3 years ago, there's no way I would have thought I would have been an agent, but now I feel like this is literally what I was born to do.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. Great question, Julian.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I do have a follow-up question. I did want to know, what were those skills and those qualities that you showed that maybe made Kyrie want to bring you onto his team and made you valuable?
So the one thing that I will say is, of course, skill set, everything is super important, right? But the biggest thing in our line of work and what we do is all relationship based. If you develop a relationship with a guy, like, just example, I'm gonna just keep using Kyrie. Kai and I have an unbelievable relationship. Like, the moment him and I stepped on campus for the first time as Duke freshmen, we experienced things together. It's a trust factor there. And when you're working with high-level athletes, whether it's, Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum, any of these guys, they want to be able to trust you, and they want to also be able to know that you have their best interest at heart. And so those guys, I tell people all the time that, I've spoken to a few groups about people wanting to be agents and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's a very rewarding job. And the biggest thing is, as long as you're, one, a good person, you're trustworthy, and you make those guys feel comfortable and like they need you around, that's the biggest thing. Like, of course, you got to be, you have to be good with certain numbers, and you have to know certain things within the NBA as far as salary cap and all that sort of stuff. Like, there's a whole science to it, of course, but the biggest thing that I've learned is just, it's all relationship based. And that's kind of how I've always lived my life. I am huge with my family and friends, more in particular, my friends. If I call you my friend, I genuinely mean that, and I care about you. I care about your family. I care about everything you have going on, regardless if it benefits me or not. And so that's kind of how I treat all the guys, the guys that I've had in this past draft and guys moving forward. That's how I've always gone about things. So it's all relationship based.
Along those lines, our buddy Sydney had a question, and you mentioned skills a little bit, Josh. So not to show deference to how important relationships are, but at some point, Kyrie or any of your clients wouldn't just say, "Well, Josh is a good dude, but he doesn't have any skills." Like, you're clearly representing their interests. So, what are some skills you think that allow you to be successful in the field and would allow some of our students to be successful?
The biggest thing is just wanting to be able. You have to learn how to talk to people, right? Like, you have to. Negotiating is the biggest thing that we really do. Obviously, our job as agents is to get each and every one of our clients the most money, to be honest, that they're owed, or the most money that they're valued at. And so being able to see the marketplace, being able to see what one guy on one team is getting, and seeing how that affects your guy, or your guy, making sure in his contract there are certain parameters set up where certain benchmarks are hit that make him a max NBA player, or certain things like that. Like, there is a whole educational system that obviously school helps you with. Like, you don't have to go to school and learn, multiple things. Like, Sydney, I know you had mentioned that you wanted to be a sports lawyer. Like, a lot of sports lawyers are agents, because what you learn in sports law navigates directly with being an agent. And so that's there are so many things, and if I really wanted to get into it, I could talk about it all day long. But honestly, just being able to see the marketplace, see different things, knowing what this guy on the Utah Jazz is getting and why your guy plays the same position, and so he should command more or a little bit more, or how much salary this guy gets is going to affect the team moving forward and them being able to sign good players to go win a championship. There's so many things that affect your guy and also the team. And so, but that's the beautiful part about it. It's a lot of work. And I recently just learned that being in Las Vegas for NBA Summer League, it's a lot of work, but it's also what we sign up to do.
So along those lines, we're going to keep Sydney on here. So we know why you enjoy working with Kyrie. You guys have a relationship, but there's got to be some challenging things when you're in your line of the business, whether it's with a specific client or just in general. Like, what are some of the things that you thought were going to be that you didn't think were going to be challenges that are now challenges in your current role?
Well, this might sound crazy. The biggest thing is rejection, going after kids and telling them and them telling you no, or they're going to sign with somebody else. That's been
you get rejected. Yeah,
it's hard to believe, but that's been the biggest thing that I've actually, in all honesty, had to deal with. You know, I was very fortunate enough to work with a really good group, and we had a really amazing NBA draft class this past year in June, or this past month in June. But there were tons of guys that I went after that, you know, said thanks but no thanks, and so I wasn't prepared for that. In reality, and sometimes I kind of get ahead of myself. You have to remember that you may not be for everybody, and everybody may not be for you. And so trying to deal with the rejection, I remember the first guy I lost, I won't say his name, but I went out and recruited him super hard. I was talking to him every other day, talking to his mother basically every day, putting in a lot of time and effort and energy. And I remember when he called me and said he was going somewhere else, it stung to my core. And I remember sitting down, it was like probably 5 minutes. I remember telling myself, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know. He's literally the first guy recruited, first rejection. And I realized I talked to some of my mentors that are in the space, and obviously Erica being one of them. And, she was like, oh, you're going to lose out on more guys than you sign. And so I think I've learned how to deal with that. But then the one thing that has been exactly how I wanted it to be, Sydney, being in this business is, again, I'm really big on relationships, but the relationships that are established and the doors that it opens. Just another example, NBA Summer League was 10 days that just wrapped up yesterday. The 7th through the 17th. In that 10-day period, 95% of the NBA was in one area in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm talking team owners. You see Mark Cuban walking the halls of the hotel. You see Steve Ballmer walking the halls of the hotel. You see Jason Tatum. You see Carmelo Anthony. You see all these athletes and execs and coaches walking through, and being able to just stop them and have conversation, and it opens up multiple doors for you. And that's been the biggest thing for me. I've always been a guy where I can get myself into a room, and once I get into the room, I'd like to open as many doors as possible. And that's how I've kind of thrived in this, and that's what I've been taking advantage of. And so that's been exactly what I thought it was going to be, and more. That's been amazing.
Josh, it's interesting to hear you talk about rejection, because like you had dealt with rejection earlier in your career, right? You talked about how like you had to come to terms with. You actually talked about that was one of your strengths, was like knowing your whatever. But I guess until you feel it, you don't really know what it feels like. Clearly, you were able to push through adversity. Did it tell you why they're picking you? Are they nice about it? Like, how do you reconcile that?
So so going back, like dealing with rejection, you deal with rejection in multiple ways, right? It depends on where you're at in your life and what you have going on. And so I, of course, dealt with rejection early on, realizing I wasn't going to be an NBA player, and realizing kind of using that as motivation to kind of push myself forward to be successful in whatever I was going to do, regardless if it was being a professional athlete or not. But then dealing with the rejection of recruiting a kid that you feel like you've put a lot of time and effort in and built a strong relationship in, that's something totally different than a rejection of knowing you're not going to the NBA. So
Coach K was probably giggling when you were complaining to him about getting rejected. He's probably got to do this stuff all the time, man.
Yeah, and he's, you think about him, like, I mean, it's hard to believe, but there are guys that reject him to go to school. And so it's like all of us deal with rejection in some sort of way. It's just how we handle it and use that, and we just we can't dwell on it for too long. And so, but everybody I've dealt with, I mean, there were. I was fortunate. I got 2 guys out of Duke this year, but there was a third that I was recruiting, which to me might have been a little out of control, trying to go get 3 guys out of there. But, I just felt, I had relationships with their family, so might as well. But their families were great. One kid just said, hey, man, like I love everything you're doing. I think you're going to be great at this, but I feel like this place is better for me right now. Guys, it all depends. And that's where I've been better about dealing with stuff like that, because it's like, as long as you can tell me what the reasoning is, I'm a realist. Like I said, if you tell me a reason and I feel like that's 100% a good reason why you're going somewhere else, I'm all for it. There's no harm, no foul. I'm not angry or any of those things, because our business is also, again, relationship based. I have to continue to keep that relationship, because he might part ways with his agent down the road and might come back. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, you can go there now, and I wish you the best. And then you never know down the road. So, yeah.
Really good question, Sydney, as always. Miles, did you have something you wanted to talk about? Bring up?
Yeah. So we do have an additional question. So how do you compartmentalize your daily life and your busy work life? Does work life balance exist for a sports agent?
So I'm going to be brutally honest. And if my wife were sitting in this room, she would definitely make sure that I was being brutally honest. I was not very good at first at balancing the two. I think when you're young and you're new in the game and you're trying to make a name for yourself, you're taking calls at all times of the night. You're constantly working, and you kind of separate yourself from family. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is trying to be super aware of that and making sure that I'm not losing sight of family. Always comes first. I will never jeopardize my family or relationships I have family wise for work. But to be honest, what we do, our job isn't 9 to 5. Our job isn't Monday through Friday. Our job is Monday through Sunday, 24/7, 365. I could have 1 call a day that could last 30 minutes or 2 hours, or I could have 6 calls a day that literally take me from 9 a.m. all the way to 5 or 6 p.m. It just depends on the day, and it depends on what's going on in that day. I could tell you the week leading up to the draft, I was probably on the phone, being on the West Coast, starting at 6 a.m. all the way until about 9 p.m. Pacific time. And that was every day, the 7 days leading up until the NBA draft. I was just on my phone or Zoom calls or talking to teams or talking to my guys' families and letting them know what was going on. So you have to have some sort of balance. Everybody, I'm very fortunate. My father-in-law was an agent for a short time, and he's had a ton of experience and a lot of success in the business. And he's been adamant about me kind of making sure that I find that balance, because it was something that he struggled with. And so I always lean on him and always just make sure that, nowadays I cut my phone off at a certain time, obviously on Do Not Disturb. There's a few people that can call me, like my clients, if they need me, they can call me. But everything else, if it's past 8 o'clock, you'll get a call or text from me first thing in the morning. Texts are the same way. I don't pick up my phone until a certain time. I feel like morning times are for my family. I have a 4-month-old son. And for me, morning times, I was just away in Las Vegas for 8 days and away from him for 8 days. And so it's like when I get home, my time is with him and my time is with my wife. And so I haven't been the best at it, and it is something that I'm continuing to work on, but it is something that is direly important. Like, you have to have that balance.
I appreciate the honesty, Joshua. Could I ask a follow-up question to that? So it's one thing that you've got your own time, you've got your wife, you've got your son. You also have multiple clients. How do you make everyone feel like they're getting enough of you? Because that would be really hard too, right? Like,
yeah, it's tough, and especially going through the pre-draft process, because kind of everybody, well, not everybody's on the same playing field, but for the most part, guys want to feel like they're just as important as the guys who may go higher. I was fortunate enough, we worked with the #1 draft pick this year, and the attention that him and his family command are through the roof, which is totally understandable. When you're the #1 pick in the NBA draft, the MLB draft, the NFL draft, you command a certain amount of attention. We had another guy that was drafted late first round. His family demands a whole nother type of attention. And so it's literally, it takes a team effort too. I don't work by myself. I have, 2 guys that work with me that are super helpful, that we all kind of outreach to everybody and make sure we have call logs where we're kind of circling everybody and making phone calls as necessary. And now that everybody, now that we finished summer league, guys have signed their contracts and we know that we're going to go. Communication is there, but it's not as much as it was, just because now we're on to the next group of kids that we're recruiting. And, we've got them to where they're going to be. They're NBA players. And so it's a lot of the responsibility is them taking care of themselves. And so, but it's a hard balance on making sure that everybody's happy, but it's also the caliber of kids you recruit, right? Like I'm very fortunate. This class we had 7 guys. We had 4 guys, 3 guys got drafted, and then we had 2 guys signed. One guy signed a 2-way, and then we had 3 other guys at summer league. All of them are very realistic with expectations, and all of them are also very real as where they are on the ladder, so to speak. And I hate saying it like that, but they understand that there are guys that need a little bit more than what they actually need, and they've made everything super easy, to be honest. So I'm very fortunate with the guys I work with too.
And you're juggling a lot, man. You're juggling a lot. I mean, I think, and lost in some of this too, is like your clients can choose not to work with you. The same way you mentioned relationships with other people that don't work with you, your clients at any point could say, you know what, Josh, you're not giving me enough love. I'm going to go somewhere else. So it goes back to that importance of relationships. Yes,
at any point. And I think that's another thing people don't understand. It's not a process where you get like a 30-day window where they're going to part ways with you at this time. I could get a phone call today from any of my guys and say, hey man, like I don't like how things are going. I think I'm going to terminate our agreement. And that's what you want to avoid. You want to get guys, you also want to retain them. And so that's another part of the balancing act, is making sure you're checking up on them and making sure they feel just as important as the guys that may be better players or the guys that you're recruiting now and all that sort of stuff. It's a constant juggle of everything, it's a very tough part. But if you have the right people around you to help you and manage it, then it's not as bad as what it sounds.
All right. So believe it or not, we're coming up on time here shortly. So, I think you mentioned it a little bit, but kind of as we start to wind down. So you played professionally, you had built relationships while at Duke, and you played such a high level that I think you had an understanding of what the expectation was for this kind of role. Relationships were important. Talk to our high school students, maybe someone who maybe won't be able to even play college basketball or college sports. What would be your advice to them as to how they could position themselves to try and go and follow your career path being a sports agent?
Well, one of the things I'll say is our events like this. I think a lot of times seminars, virtual seminars, or seminars in general, or any speaking engagement, a lot of times are frowned upon, and people may not think it's cool or it's a waste of time or whatever. But this, literally doing things like this and being able to hear from somebody that is in the field that you may want to be in, it's really important, because again, I feel like I've repeated it multiple times, but it is based off of relationships and who you're meeting and getting yourself in the door and having those conversations. One of the things that Coach K taught us is, it doesn't matter what event. Duke is obviously one thing Duke has been tremendously good at is Coach always puts on these galas or events or whatever the case may be, where you're in the room with some very powerful people. And instead of just sitting down at the table talking amongst your teammates, get up and network, get up and have conversations with other people in the room. And exchange contact information and use those people as a resource. And that's what I did. And I remember when I first realized this is what I wanted to do as far as agents are concerned, I called Coach K, and I immediately flew to North Carolina and sat with him for a couple days and just had some conversations. And he started inviting me to events with him that had certain people in the agent space that I could connect with and start building my own contact list, essentially, and started building and developing my own relationships. And so taking advantage of opportunities like this. And I mean, the fact that I don't know how many people are viewing this right now, but however many people are here viewing this, this shows that you guys are serious about your future and what you guys want to do moving forward. And that is something I'll tell you guys: never sacrifice on your future. Never sacrifice on whatever step you need to take to make sure your future is solidified in whatever you want to do, whether it's being a professional athlete, being a sports lawyer like Sydney, being a broadcaster, whatever you want to do. There's tons of jobs in the world of sports. Never sacrifice on an opportunity to move yourself forward. If there's an event that you feel like you want to go to that, you know, Stephen A. Smith is putting on, and you want to feel like you want to be a journalist or a broadcaster, make sure you're at that event. If there's an agent seminar or there's something going on at your school or something like this is being put on, make sure you're there to attend and listen and take notes and get the contact information from the speaker, whoever. Just take advantage of every opportunity you have, because at the end of the day, it's setting you up. It's setting you up to be successful in whatever field you want to be in. And that's one thing I tell guys all the time: do not sacrifice on your future. Don't think you're too cool to go do something. Don't think that it's a waste of time. Like, especially now as you guys are getting older, you guys are going to blink and you're going to be 30. And all of a sudden you're going to be wondering what you want to do with your life. And as long as you're laying that foundation, that's why I said, I wish I would have done better in my younger days, is laid the foundation of where I knew as soon as I finished playing basketball, I could have seamlessly transitioned into whatever career choice that I chose at that time. But that's the biggest thing, is just taking advantage of every opportunity you guys have, and network. Your network is your net worth. Remember that. Network is your net worth.
I love it, Joshua. Miles, do you have a specific takeaway? I know I want to kind of close off a couple takeaways as well.
Yeah, I definitely want to take away with the fact that relationships are going to get you where you need to go, and there are specific soft skills that help you build those relationships, like being on time, speaking properly, and those things go a long way.
Yeah, I was kind of allude to that. I think you're always on, right? And if Josh had not been a great teammate to Kyrie, then they wouldn't have built that friendship. And if Kyrie wasn't there when Josh was saying, I got to figure out what I'm going to do, and give him some sound advice and help him kind of enter the business, then, like, Josh, your career is a totally different animal. And you weren't befriending Kyrie when you were a freshman in college because you thought he was going to help you find a career path 8 years later, right? It was about you being who you were and him being who he was. And that relationship doesn't always have to come like mentor to mentee. It can be friend to friend. And I think that's so awesome. So, like, our students could have a friend that could be that for them, right? Or could they have a mentor, a teacher, a coach, or they could be that for someone else. And I don't know that a lot of students ever think about that.
No, I can definitely agree with you, man. I can tell you, I knew Kyrie was an NBA player. I told you after the first workout we had, and I knew he was going to be what he has ultimately become. But when him and I were developing our relationship, I wasn't thinking 10 years down the road, or whatever the case may be, thinking about, being an agent or anything like that. I was just thinking about being a friend.
Yeah, you're being a good dude. Yeah, just building a relationship.
Being a dude, yeah, just building a relationship. And then I know Miles, when I had spoken to Miles a few days ago, I was saying, even with like my friendships at Duke, I had a lot of friends that weren't athletes at Duke. And even looking back at those relationships now, and I have friends that are running their own companies, that have started their own apps, and they're CEOs, and they're in positions of power, who were my year at Duke, who came in with me in 2010 and graduated in 2014. And I have those relationships to leverage to be able to call for my athletes. I have one of my friends is really big with tonal, and I can call him about helping get my athletes involved or whatever he's building. And so it's literally everything comes full circle at all at all times. And you never know what one relationship could lead to another relationship, or how, you may have multiple relationships and how it all leads to one. It's just, again, I know I keep saying that word, but I'm being serious when I tell you guys that's literally how I've lived my entire life, and especially my life as an agent and transitioning into the business world where I'm not an athlete anymore. I just try to, when I meet somebody for the first time, I shake their hands, I look them in their eye, I repeat their name after they say it, and I just establish my own relationship with them at that point. So that's just how I go about things.
Is it going to be awesome when one of our students hires you as their agent? It's going to come full circle.
That's going to be a full circle moment. Trust me, guys. If you guys, whoever, I'm branching off in other sports, so just let me know.
Josh, thanks so much, man. That was amazing. We've never had that type of real insight, and your background is so unique. So really appreciate you taking time, especially considering you're so busy balancing all the stuff with summer league, your 4-month-old, your wife during the off season. You got a lot going on, man. Thanks for making time for us.
No, thank you guys for having me, man, and look forward to being back soon.
Appreciate it. All right, squad, we're going to break for our roundtable discussions. We're going to let Joshua get back to it. So you guys, what's going to happen now is Lana's going to pull us out of the main stage. You'll be in the lobby. Once you're in the lobby, you can find your specific table. And you can sit down and talk with various folks in the sports agent and sports law field. Lana, do you want to say anything else before we adjourn?
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, thank you again so much for your time and your insights. Students, you'll find your table based on your last name initial. We'll have 3 different tables. And then the pros who are joining us, you will have an assigned table. So I'm going to drop in the chat, the spreadsheet. And then once this session ends, you'll be able to see the tables, and then you'll see the student navigation last names on each of the tables above. I'll be at table 1, which is our SBC support table. If you do have any technical difficulties, questions, comments, concerns, that type of thing. Yeah, that's it on my end.
One quick note, guys, video on if you possibly can. As Josh mentioned before, you want to build relationships. The best way to build a relationship is by having a conversation with someone, seeing your face, if permissible. If you're in an area, you can do that. But that's a great way to have a good conversation with these folks. And that's why they're here, is to talk to you guys, not to just chat. Cool? Yep. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Good buddy.
Thank you.
All righty.